Welcome to the Global Peace Film Festival Lives Online Conversation 2024 Festival Edition. Please join me, Kelly Devine, the head programmer, and Nina Strike, founder and festival director, in conversation with Susanne Rostock, the director of Following, a film that you can see at the upcoming Global Peace Film Festival, which begins in September. Our in-person programming begins September 17th and ends on the 22nd. Our virtual programming begins September 23rd and ends on the 29th. All the information about ticketing, location of events, and types of events can be found at peacefilmfest.org. And now let's welcome Susanne to the conversation. Susanne, thank you so much for joining us today. Really looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
And Susanne, for people who are watching this glow who have not seen Following Hary, can you tell us a little bit about the film?
Absolutely. So I'm going to tell a little pre-story to give some context to the film. But Following Hary is a documentary that I made over a period of almost 14 years about Hary Belafonte in the last 14 years of his life. Prior to that period, which started in 2011, really, I made a film about Hary Belafonte called Sing Your Song. And that film covers Hary's, really his whole life from birth until about 2009. And it really centers very much on his life as an artist and activist. And at the end of the film, Hary says, "What do you do now?" And I decided to answer that question. And along with deciding to answer that question, Hary invited me to join him in a new office he was setting up. So I had the great honor, amazing honor and privilege of sharing an office with Hary Belafonte, seeing him every day, going home on the same subway with him, having breakfast with him because we lived in the same neighborhood. So I had an incredible access to Hary Belafonte, who was really trying at that point in 2011 to figure out what his last chapter would be, what he could contribute to making sure that a good and just and compassionate future would be ahead. And so that was an interesting place to picking up in his life. And our office was always full of so many interesting artists and activists coming through, asking for advice and sharing ideas. And it just became really a hotbed for concerns about the future. Then with the death of Trayvon Martin, Hary hit the ground running. And that's when I really started filming. And the film takes us all the way up to the present. The Women's March was created in our office. So many discussions about how to organize Ferguson and on and on and on were talked about in our office with many of the young leaders. I was down in Ferguson a few days after Michael Brown was murdered filming. So it's a very much you are there in the moment of history kind of film. You're watching history as it's being created, and you're watching very much the behind the scenes, never before seen behind the scenes of so much activism, so much movement building, and so much pain and joy. So that's really the essence of Following Hary. It's very personal. Hary is the guide through the film, and it's a sort of it's not your standard documentary, talking heads documentary. It's poetic and a little experimental, and hopefully it reaches people's hearts and minds. So that's my film.
That you've actually answered the first question I was going to ask you, and I'm glad you talked about how poetic the film is, because we meet so many young, inspirational leaders, both arts leaders and in the arts, and also activists. So talk about the importance of this film and the importance of sharing these stories through the lens of basically of Hary.
So that's a multifold answer. Hary, I always felt with Hary, even with my first film, that there was a way to create a blueprint for the future, that his wisdom, his insights, his radical thinking actually offered a lot of answers to questions that people might have about what do you do? Where do you turn? How can you make a difference? And I'm sorry, that's my doorbell. But so the the idea was to make a blueprint for the future. I have a young daughter; she's 28 now. When I started the first film, she was still in high school, and I could see that with young people there was such a hunger, and there still is a hunger to do something. And where do you fit in? What can you actually do? And I think there are many answers held. There are many choices and many answers held within the storytelling and the way Hary unpacks a lot of what you witness. And so it's not just a film about demonstrations. It's a film about what brings you to that place and the effect afterwards.
What surprised you as you were making the film? I mean, this is a long journey, and it was a circuitous journey in a way, but also with a very, with a real purpose to it. So, what were the surprises that you found along the way?
Well, the biggest surprise was how much self-doubt Hary had with all that he had done, with Martin Luther King, and, going all the way back to the beginning of the civil rights movement, all that Hary had contributed, that the fact that he felt he hadn't done enough surprised me. So hi, my dog's joining in. He has thoughts too. Um, that surprised me. What also surprised me was, and this is, there are two sides to this, the absolute love and adoration and respect that a lot of young people had. And then there were groups of young people who, and I'm not going to use a curse word, but, who said, why should we listen to you, Hary? Because you and all of your group during the civil rights movement, you messed up, or we wouldn't be in the position we're in now. So why should we listen to you? And he always answered with such, because he had such love and respect for everyone. He said, you're right. We dropped the ball. We blinked, and now it's time to pick it up again. And so, but learn. And that's also another important theme in the film is learn from history, learn from what came before. Stop trying to reinvent the wheel, try to build on what came before. And this is so much of Hary's thinking too, and his insights in trying to help people build, not make the same mistakes, not get lost in the bickering and egos and narcissism of leadership, which is inevitable no matter how left wing you are. That always rises up somehow, the competition of who's the top and all of that. So he living through what he lived through had so much to offer. So don't question, my feelings always, and don't question, you messed up. Why should we listen to you? Say, how can we do better? And at the end of the film, I'm not going to give anything away, but Hary does, I'm going to paraphrase so you don't lose the beauty of it, but he does say, I've showed you my life. I've showed you what I've learned, and learn from it and bring something better. He just says, bring something better. He's not saying he has the answers, but what he has is the offering to find the answers. And I know in Sing Your Song, not to keep on going back to that, but they're really two parts of the same story. Ruby Dee says to Hary, I want an assignment. Give me an assignment. And Hary says, the assignment is to find the assignment. It's on you. You find it. We all have it. We all have the answers within us, and they're all different answers. And so that's the film, I'm hoping, will motivate people to find their own. Even if you just change the mind of one person, the hearts and minds of one person, you're making a difference, because it's an additive thing. If everybody just changed one person, you have a whole new universe, so it's you don't have to think in the big global picture always. You can think just on the community, or your neighbor on the floor below, or the shopkeeper, or it's it opens up. The film, I'm hoping, will open up that broader thinking, and will create a more positive and stronger working towards change. Yeah.
Well, you've also pretty much described the mission of the Global Peace Film Festival, which is to use creative media to inspire people to do things to make the world a better place and to work for peace and justice. So that's why we were so excited to be able to program this film in the festival, and hope that everybody watching this will find an opportunity either to come to the festival or see it wherever it is available in the future. So you have really talked about what Hary said about taking these ideas into their own lives, finding their, as Ruby Dee said in Sing Your Song, find your assignment. What would you say, how would you encourage young people particularly, but old people as well, to find their assignment?
It's a question that comes up so often, because I know at the end of Sing Your Song, when he says, "What do you do now?" I remember I'm giving you an example that might help answer this question in a different way. So I was showing it at a film festival in Costa Rica, and I brought my daughter to it, which I often did. I loved bringing her around the world with me. And so several people stood up at once and said, what do we do now? What do we do now? And I said, you go and speak to my daughter, who's at that time, she was 16 years old, sitting in the back row of the theater. And she teaches dance to the blind. That's what she does. She figured out what her strength was at that point in her life, what her gift was. And she figured out how to make a difference with it. So go speak to her. How did she come to that? Find your own gift that you have, because we all have something to give. And the other thing is that's so important, and it will come out very much at the end of the film, but it's a wisdom that Hary just purported so often, and that's that there's good in everyone, and you have to find that good. You have to find that good and zero in on it. So do not. I know right now it's hard to imagine. There's certain people that I don't think there's good in, but it's hard to to imagine. But you have to just keep on working at it, and looking around, and just yeah, that's how you find it. Think about what's needed in your community. Think about that. Start there. If that's less overwhelming. And as I know, I've mentioned the block, but it's so amazing what you see on the block, or in the building where you live, or your neighbor who needs groceries picked up. Or you start that, and then you can start a conversation that leads to other conversations, that brings in other people. So there are ways of building. You don't have to immediately have 1,000 people in an auditorium and you on a panel to make a difference. As a matter of fact, that's not always the most effective way. It's much more one-on-one, the intimate, the personal.
That's what we've said with the Global Peace Film Festival, that it starts within every one of us.
It does. It does. And it's our duty, it's our responsibility to care about each other. And that's something that cannot be stressed enough. It is your response as a human. It is our responsibility to care about each other. And that's a lost concept. It's not something, it's coming back, I think, and not to talk politics, although my film is very political, because a very important part of the film is the idea of voting. And that's carried throughout the film. It's essential. You have that that power. You do have power. You have more power than you understand, and you have the power of vote. And the power of the vote, people died for. People died so that you could vote. We can vote. So, keep that in mind. And you might not want to die for your cause, but you certainly can promote a cause like that, like voting, and show up at the polls. But stepping back from that, caring about each other, I think the tone is changing in the country. I'm hoping that I think that my film is full of hope and love. And Hary has this great line in the film where he says, he actually narrows it down to all Black people really want to do is enjoy the universe. That's all we want to do, enjoy the universe. I think that's a very universal feeling, and it's oppression that gets in the way of that. And it's love that will drive out oppression. And love is very underrated. And love is really the caring of one another. And so that's how I feel very strongly. And Hary, of course, and hearing Hary's words, there are not many people who speak the way Hary does, and which is unfortunate. And so that's why I wanted to preserve that, because you need to know that there were voices, and there are voices that sound like that, but you don't hear from them because they're not the loud screaming voices. They're the more subtle voices. And so there has to be not only room for those voices, but people have to look for those voices and listen for them, and start being guided by a gentler and more caring tone. And there's no room for hate. There's no reason for hate. There is in some people's minds, but here we are. We're so under. Oh no, I'm going to go off now. I'm sorry. We're so under evolved as a species that it's so maddening that that hatred still exists. It's really just so. It's hard to understand. Hard to understand. And, I'm 76. I've lived a fair amount of time, and I was very active in all the movements. I was in SDS. I was at Columbia, and I go back before then. I wanted to march when I was 15 with Martin Luther King. I was brought up by Jewish, European, Bohemian doctors who were Marxists, And so I was brought up to love. That's what I was brought up for. And so it's still a shock to me at my age that that's not how people think. I'm very naive in that way, but and that's why I wanted to make this film, to wake people up, to see that there's a better way to think about life, and it's our duty to make sure that that hate does not win, hatred does not win, that there's no room for hatred, suffocate hatred. That's a very violent, aggressive thing to say, but get rid of it. Eliminate hate.
Well, Susanne, you mentioned caring and supporting and kindness, and you've certainly in this interview showed so much of that spirit to our audience listening. How could our audience reciprocate and care and support you and in your work, and what is next for you after this project?
Well, first of all, the way people can support me is to support the mission of the film, and that is to vote, get out there and vote, and get out there and make a difference, and find your own way of making a difference in healing and caring and supporting others. That's the best way. I'm working on a number of films. Seems to take me a long time to finish a film. One film I've been working on for 28 years, and it's finished now, and it's about homegrown terrorism. That's a whole other story. That's sort of the flip side of what this film is, of following Hary. It's following a hatred starting in 1995, when the KKK seemed to be on the rise again, and nobody was paying attention. So that's that film. It doesn't have a title now. We keep on changing the title. So, but Tip of the Iceberg might be one of the titles. but I'm also working on a film that I started before following Hary, which is called Another Night in the Free World. And it was what I discovered in all the work I've been doing for the last 50 years in film. A lot of it is archival. And so much of the archival footage is missing anything about what women have done. They're not documented. Women are not documented, even in the civil rights movement. You know, how much you find of Fannie Lou Hamer? Like, tiny little bit, you know, Sadie Nash, any of them. And so any of these amazing women who are so responsible for the movement. And so I decided that that's not going to happen again. So I was lucky enough to get money from HBO within an unprecedented, Gina Belafonte and I got the money in an unprecedented contract where we have full creative freedom to do it and finish it whenever we finish it. So that was years ago. I still haven't finished it. So I'm still working on it. A lot of it is in following Hary, because I decided to follow three young women activists in America, because so much at that time stories were not being told about what America was doing in activism. If you think before Trayvon Martin, really there was very little talking about what was going on here. And it was more about what was happening in other parts of the world, all very important. But, you know, nothing was being said here. So I chose Carmen Perez as one of the women, and Tenjiwe and Tynesha McHarris were twins, African-American twins, and who are doing, all of these women, all three women are doing amazing work. And so I started following them and their personal lives, and, you know, just followed them. I'm still following them for years. And so that's my next film, I hope, or that might be ongoing, and I might finish something else before then. But it's really about women and what it means to be a woman activist, really, what the sacrifices made, and the pain, a lot of pain, and just finding your way and what your contribution is as a woman in activism. So that's been very well documented, and a lot of it you see in following Hary, because that's how I got all of that. The Women's March was not, I was not filming that for following Hary. And I filmed so much of the behind the scenes. That's a whole film in itself almost. And the same even with Ferguson. I was down there not for Hary, but for Another Night in the Free World. But then all the activists came up to speak to Hary. And I filmed that. You'll see it. You've seen it. You haven't, but you'll see it in the film where they come to speak to Hary about what's going on down there and what, you know, getting his wisdom on that. So, and then there's some other films. The Hidden Diary of Diane Carroll. That's another, going in a little different direction, but it's still also a poetic and political film. And a couple of other films, but that I have to finish soon. I'm running out of time. I'm almost like Hary, you know, when Hary talks about the film, you know, in the film, you see it in the film in the beginning, you know, he's lived almost 100 years and now you only have 10 seconds. Well, I'm feeling, because I'm a little younger than 100, I feel like I have 20 seconds. So I have an urgency to get on with it. So when I come down to Florida, I'm not going to go to the beach. Well, you're not even near the beach in Orlando, but I'm not going to Disney World. I'm coming there to do the work and enjoy doing the work. So.
Oh, thank you, Susanne. We are really looking forward to welcoming you down to the festival and hosting you. And so thank you so much. We have been in conversation with Susanne Rostock, director of Following Hary, which is part of the Global Peace Film Festival. If you want to find out more information about Following Hary, go to followinghary.org. And if you want to learn more about the upcoming festival events, please go to peacefilmfest.org. There you will find all of the dates, tickets, and activities that you can participate in. But more than anything, Susanne, thank you for your message of kindness and caring for one another. It's a beautiful message, and it really can't be underlined enough. So thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And we will see you all at the next Globe.